After understanding and doing more deep dive into stage, street, conversational, therapeutic, and all the different other old school approaches of some of the older methods of what didn't look like hypnosis, but what was hypnosis, some of the spiritual approaches to healing, mesmerism. There's lots of different things that if you look at them through certain lenses, there's a lot of hypnosis that's part of that process. And I realized that anytime you interact with someone, even your posture, your tonality, they all unconsciously influence people. So if I was to say I was walking down the street this morning, and as I was walking my dog, a red Ferrari pulled up and did a burnout right in front of me. The door swung open and a clown dressed in full yellow stepped out of the car and had a whole stack of huge inflated colorful balloons. And as they stepped out of the car, all these doves flew from behind them. For you to understand what I'm saying, at some level, you're making a mental image of what I'm talking about.
On this week's podcast episode, I talk with mindset and NLP guru Paul Eliseo on the unconscious mind, life reflecting you your results, becoming hypnotised, the filters in which we view the world, our belief systems, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Mr. Paul Eliseo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Blake. Super excited to be on here.
Mate, firstly,
yeah.
How long ago was it, do you reckon, that we were throwing weights around in Fitness First in South Australia?
Well, you were one of the originals as well. So
yeah.
I remember my 21st birthday, I was in the orientation or whatever induction they call it. And so probably getting close to 16, 17 years ago.
Wow.
That long ago, yeah.
Wow. So for those jumping on, we are in very different places now. But yeah, back in the day, back 2003, do you reckon? 2004.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, 2004 probably. I started in the PT space, but that is not where we're going today. We're going down very different paths. Mate, before we go down those paths, can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Awesome. So I'm Paul Eliseo from Evolve and Relaunch Education. I am lucky enough to run a business with my partner, Juliet, who I think's been on the podcast before. And we run a company that runs a lot of different educational programs, everything from NLP, mindset coaching, hypnotherapy. And we also are bringing out a lot of cool other courses. Juliet runs some book writing courses. And we basically just want to help people level up their mindset and skill set, everything mind, body, to help them to get the most out of themselves. But if they work with people, also to have a skill set to help others as well. So we spend pretty much all our time doing that. And like I said, I've been on a journey, started a lot with body work with people and being a PT, but realizing pretty quickly that it doesn't matter how many sort of sets and reps you got, like fine-tuned and nutrition plan. If people had mental, emotional blocks, you're pretty much wasting your time a lot of times with clients. So dive deeper into that world after, realizing a lot of people had blocks there and realizing where I got my personal transformation was with these kind of skills. So I brought that into what I was doing as a coach and things kind of snowballed from there.
A book that you're bringing out soon, when this is released, it will be out, Evolve Your Mind.
Yes.
When you think about your mindset,
yes,
and as someone who's been 1 degree of separation from you for 15 years and then obviously going through your hypno course last year, you've been one of the kind of more interesting people to see your own evolution. What's the importance of evolving your mind and how have you seen your mind evolve over the last kind of 15 years?
Awesome. Super, super cool question. I think to start with, a bit of a definition of the mind is really important because a lot of people, when they think of the mind, they get a picture of the brain in their sort of nervous system. And that's part of the mind, but it's not everything. And the definition I like is the definition Dr. Dan Siegel came up with is the mind is an embodied process that regulates the flow of energy. It's both relational, it's self-organizing. And so that really means that your mind isn't just your brain's part of it, but it's also the body and your interactions and connections with yourself and other people. So it kind of makes the mind a process, a bigger thing, but also a lot more than just what most people think it is. So I think for me, my journey has been like early on in my life, I had a bit of a tumultuous kind of upbringing and really struggled mentally, emotionally, and physically in my late teens or in early childhood, a bit of that too. But then I really had a lot of things bubble up as a teenager. I had a lot of panic attacks, anxiety, paranoia, got to the point where I couldn't even leave my house, like because of what was going on internally. And that led to a lot of physical symptomology as well. And so I had to have that wake up call to kind of get me to pay attention to what my mind and body was really showing me. And so that kind of brought me to the journey within, and that got me really interested in understanding like what was happening mentally that was affecting me physically. And when I sort of had that light bulb moment and started finding books and tapes and all these different programs and started applying that stuff, I literally went from a kid that couldn't leave my bedroom to working in the biggest gym in South Australia pretty quickly. And so I literally saw myself and my world transform, and really finding the body and mind connection and really working at both those levels took me to where I am today. And so that, helps me to understand what people are going through, because I've been through some similar and different things, but also have seen a lot of transformations and work with a lot of clients at those levels. So I know what's possible, and it's really, really fun and really powerful and really inspiring to work with people like that.
So when you think about evolving your mind, and let's say that someone's at the start of their journey,
yes,
which is a long way from where you are, but how and where would you suggest someone starts when it comes to evolving their mind if they're really in those infant stages?
Cool. So this is one of the reasons we wrote the book, because we had a lot of people ask us what's a great intro book to, help someone on the journey. And so Juliet and I were like, look, let's put out something that's going to help people with that. And so some of the process is the awareness of what they are and their mind is, awareness of some of the unconscious patterns that we're creating and presenting in our world, understanding and setting some clear goals and understanding your values and beliefs, which are then going to help you to kind of navigate where you're at and where you want to go, and maybe what some of the potential roadblocks have been. And I'm always an advocate for finding a coach, doing some study, because having coaching, mentoring, and finding some great courses that can help you on the path literally speed up your results in any area of life. So whether it's a physical trainer, whether it's a mindset coach, whether it's a program, it's a course, something that can have a bit of a framework that you can follow to help you navigate and get moving. Because for a lot of people, getting that first step, getting that momentum behind them is what they need. And so that's super important. And working at both levels, having those small, consistent wins at a physical level and, getting some body transformation, getting healthier, getting your nutrition right, getting your sleep and hydration, those things dialed in, it really sets the stage for the psychology to balance, because the physiology starts to balance, but also having your psychology balanced helps your physiology to change too. So getting clear on who you are, what you want out of life, what's important to you, they're really the foundation that you can build on top of. And so that's where I would sort of suggest to start.
One of the things I found really interesting with working with people, especially in those infant stages, is almost the question of like, how do I know it's a limiting belief if it's just my belief?
Mm-hmm.
How do you address that piece when it comes to, awareness and inquiry around your own belief system?
Yes. So life reflects you, right? And so if you look at your life, the old Buddhist quote, if you want to see what your thoughts were today, look at your body tomorrow. If you want to know what your thoughts were yesterday, look at your body today, right? So you can literally look at your results in your health, your results in your business, your results in relationship. And that kind of mirrors back what your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and values have been up until now. So you can kind of look at the mirror of life and go, hey, this isn't exactly where I want that to be, or this isn't. And then you do that internal kind of unpacking or exploration where you can kind of look at what are some of the contributing beliefs that may have limited your results in that area. And what are some of your beliefs that might be useful in other areas? And then with a coach or someone helping you unpack that can be really powerful, because we'll live up to or down to what we think we can do. And so having a more expansive belief system will help you to activate what's already inside you. Like a great coach doesn't give you anything. They just help you to find stuff about yourself. And so if they can help you unlock some of the things that maybe you've padlocked, that you've put a glass ceiling on, that's magic, because then you can tap into that part of yourself, because you have had results in some areas of life. Everyone, doesn't matter. It might look different than someone else, but everyone has their version of success. But when we compare it to other people, it's really easy to sometimes downplay that. But if you can take that resourcefulness and that genius, that skill set that you do have, and help it to grow into other areas that you want to expand on, that's really powerful. So life will show you, but just paying attention to your internal dialogue, looking at some of the repetition of things that have occurred in your life, because it kind of echoes. life will kind of knock on the door, then it starts banging the door, then it kicks it down. And so like through life, you'll get those waves and echoes of repeating patterns. And that will normally indicate a lot of what's going on internally as well.
What have you found? I mean, between you and Juliet, the skill set is quite elite, and it's pretty awesome to witness. What's your process at the stage that you're at for uncovering limitations, making sense of blind spots? Like, what's the process look like for you guys at a more top end?
Cool. Well, we do a lot of check-ins with each other. We normally weekly, we'll kind of do a bit of review. We'll do like a little meeting and sort of plan our week out. We'll do like an overview, normally monthly, and we have like larger sort of touch points to kind of set our year out and plan. At the moment, we're doing a bit of adjusting with what we're doing business-wise and, life-wise. We've got a lot of different balls we're juggling, and I might talk about that later. But we talk a lot. Communication is huge. And when things do bubble up, we kind of sometimes help each other unpack. At different times, we will sometimes, help each other navigate with a technique, but we're not always like, sometimes in relationships, great if your partner isn't the person that's doing that. And so that's great. But when things are bubbling up, we check in with each other. We'll talk it through. We'll play out different scenarios. Just recently, we've decided to pause one of our offerings in our business because it was a very time consuming. It was a great money generator, but it kind of took a lot from us that stopped us from doing other things that we want to grow. So we've kind of taken a step back to take a step forward. So just assessing how things are going, checking in on how you're doing, like energetic wise and emotionally, and kind of plugging those holes and really building ourselves back up again is where we're kind of at the moment. And, just taking time to check in with each other and ourselves and reassess and recalibrate as things do bubble up. I think it's important, and regular intervals to do that. Like, not letting it go too long before you sit down and work out how things are going or what needs to be adjusted, and having time and space just to let each other empty without having to change or fix things. Just, this is what's going on at the moment. This is what's happening, and just letting it be what it is. And then occasionally you might make a bit of a plan after that, but sometimes it just needs to be said or it just needs to be brought up. That's a lot of what it looks like behind the scenes.
One of the things that you mentioned in there is the amount of balls that you guys are juggling.
Yeah.
And one of those balls, well, a few of them I'm a big fan of, but one of them is NLP.
Yeah.
For someone who's heard of NLP but doesn't quite understand it, how would you best break it down for a beginner?
Awesome. So NLP at its core, and the ideas of NLP have been around since the 70s, so it's not a new thing, but like for some people might be new in their world, basically came from the idea of the originators to try to find out if they could work out why certain people were getting certain results with their clients. So they had this mindset of curiosity and exploration to kind of what they call model, to find out what specifically are these certain coaches and therapists doing, how specifically are they interacting, what kind of questions, what kind of language, what kind of intention and mindset are they bringing in to the interaction that's creating the result. Because there's lots of different styles of therapy and lots of coaches, but why were certain people getting knock it out the ballpark results and others kind of banging their head against the wall? So that mindset then led to a trail of techniques. So after modeling certain therapies and certain therapists, they realized there were certain patterns that created magic. And so they end up becoming some of the tools and techniques that are commonly taught in NLP. But a lot of NLP trainings only just teach the tools, but don't teach the mindset as deep and as important. So for me, I'm always going back to the idea of modeling. And so in what we do in Evolve and Relaunch, we've built in a lot of more new updated models to really bring people back to the importance of the mindset, the importance of the coach-client interaction, the importance of your intentionality when applying any of these tools, because the tools are fantastic, but what supercharges them is the intention behind them. And so NLP really gives you a framework and a model to then apply to self in lots of areas of life, whether it's leveling up your own personal mindset, letting go of things from the past is very great for therapeutic work, great for belief change, great for understanding your values, great for communication in general, for you to understand yourself and other people, but also be more articulate, but also more intentional in how you ask questions and where you direct conversations. But also then in future-based forward generative work, goal setting, modeling people that have been successful in unpacking what made them that way, what are their beliefs, what are their actions, what are their habits and behaviors, and then helping you to create systems and structure that can help you emulate excellence as well.
If you were to give an example of how NLP has either impacted your world or how you've seen it transform the world of your clients or even some of your coaches. What's an example so that people can grab something kind of tangible as to the impact of NLP?
Well, I might as well start with myself because that's a great place to start. Like I said, if I flash back to my sort of late teen years, I was like really struggling mentally, emotionally. I had a pretty interesting family dynamic. My parents had separated and my mum remarried. The dynamic was always pretty tumultuous there with a lot of different, these days I see it as it helped me a lot, but at the time I perceived it as being very like confronting, abusive, etc. And that created a lot of mental, emotional stress. I was always in a fight or flight state, always looking for a threat, always afraid of what I would say, what I would do, and shut myself down. And then my body sort of reflected that in terms of how it was responding to the world. And so running into some of these tools, like one of the first books that really opened my eyes up was a book that talked about how if you're having, stomach issues and digestive issues, which I had a lot of, I had a bit of IBS going on and panic attacks and all these kind of things happening. It said, pay attention to what you're thinking when your body is having that. And so I started connecting that. I was imagining future scenarios and situations where there might be a verbal confrontation or there might be a situation that emerged. And my body would start going into that response, even though it wasn't really happening. It was just happening inside my own imagination. And that sort of switched the light bulb on for me. I'm like, wow, if I'm doing that with my thoughts, like how powerful is this? And then I ran into, whether it's fate or whether it's, my mum brought me a couple of random things. Once she brought me this book, it was called Learned Optimism. And there's about 50 books called that. And like, this was the book. And it had a one page out of the whole book that I used, self-hypnosis. All I did was lie down, did some breathing, and I repeated some things to myself. I'm cool, calm, collected, and confident. And I was not at the time. But the ability to relax my body, center my mind, and just repeat things to myself started to compound. Then one day she brought home Tony Robbins' Personal Power 2 program that she borrowed from one of her friends. And it was a cassette tape of like 30 cassettes. And I had one of those dual cassette tape things. And she brought me some TDK tapes that she bought from Cunningham's warehouse. And she goes, Paul, can you copy this for me? Like, I'm probably going to get arrested for illegally dubbing Tony Robbins tape. But I started recording it and doing the high-speed dubbing where it's like, and then eventually when I was swapping tapes over, I'd hear some of it. I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. So I started listening to it, and no joke, that changed my life. That audio recording, I listened to it so many times. I could literally word for word tell you what was on some of those recordings. They just became ingrained. And some of the processes, he did a process called the 2 futures. He called it the Dickens pattern, where you go into the future and like Scrooge, where you go and see what the 2 futures would be like. That turned my life around dramatically. At the time, as a teenager, you kind of, drink and smoke and do all these kind of things. And a lot of that maybe wasn't contributing to my stability mentally, emotionally. And I literally just completely stopped all of that after doing that process and started getting healthy, started changing things. And it was night and day. I basically completely changed as a person after doing those sort of tools and techniques. And so I felt how powerful that was for me. And then I started setting goals. I decided I wanted to be a personal trainer. I always loved movement, but I'd got so far away from that. Stepped into the biggest gym in South Australia, pretty quickly became successful, but then started learning more and more about the body, learning more and more about nutrition, about reps and sets, and giving my clients even more complicated programs that they couldn't stick to. And then realizing that most of them were just tripping over their own thoughts and emotions. And then I thought, hey, look, what helped me? What was that stuff? What if I worked with clients that way? And then the results transformed, and I was getting better results with the once a month sit down chat session than I was the rest of the month training with my clients. And they were all saying that. So I couldn't ignore it. So I started doing more and more of that, and it just started to build from there.
I'll be really interested in your thoughts on this. I'm surprised I haven't asked you this earlier. Yeah. When you think about the health and fitness industry as a whole now, with the information that you've got around mindset, psychology, human behavior, how do you see it? Because I see it very differently now with an understanding of humans and how backwards it is. But how do you see the health and fitness industry as a whole based on what you now understand about change?
Yeah, well, I think it's changed a lot since we were heavy in it as well. The technology these days, Instagram, everyone knows the latest exercises. Everyone knows the best way to build a booty. Everyone knows so much more about nutrition, so much more about, all the different options than they were back when we were sort of doing stuff. And that's a good thing, but also it's information overload a lot for people as well. Like, you don't know what the right thing is and you don't really know. I think a lot of trainers are integrating a lot more approaches that are a little bit more holistic, and they're not just all about doing this rep, doing this set, doing this kind of program. A lot of them are looking at understanding the client a lot better, understanding their values and what's important to them, and setting goals like that. I think a lot of exercise and training, some people are using it as a punishment, and there's some forms of training that you see out there where people just smash themselves and they go there and just kind of beat their body down. And that has a place, but obviously that doesn't end well if you do it long term. I'm not as on ground level as I used to be. I basically train at home now in my own home gym, so I don't go to the big gyms as much as I used to. And occasionally when I do jump in there, a lot of trainers look like they are doing great stuff, and they're a lot more informed, a lot more switched on with technique and doing the right kind of things for clients. I think the ability to access good information is so much better than it used to be. So I think it has grown, it has changed, it has evolved. But, like any field, there's always room for improvement. And I feel like a lot of fields have opened up to the mind body a lot more in the last sort of 20 years. I think it's definitely growing that way. I think there's a lot more education that goes on with coaching client versus, just doing things for the sake of doing things. I don't know how some of the education processes are, like the first sort of certifications when we first did it. They were pretty basic, and you had to do a lot after that to get yourself to a really good level. I know they've improved, and I used to teach for some companies and teach Cert 3 and Cert 4 in fitness, but that was a fair while ago now. And I have also worked for other companies that upskill and educate trainers, and the information of that was fantastic. So I think what's out there does help people to look at more than just what happens in the gym. So I think that's great. But, there are still the areas that are just body focused, just aesthetics and looks, and not so much on the psychology and mental, emotional well-being. But I think there's so much good stuff out there that if people are looking for it, they can find it too. So I don't think it's as one-sided as it used to be. And what are your thoughts on that?
That's probably where more I was leading in terms of, the fad diets and the exercise regimes. I think it's so much better equipped. But in terms of getting long-term sustainable results, I still think it's like, understanding emotional eating, understanding, the mindset involved in so that's probably more where I was leading you from in terms of how it's still got a long way to develop to understand that.
Yeah, on the front end, it's not sexy to talk about long-term sustainable goals for most people.
Yeah. 100%.
And depending on what age group people are, like people want the quick fix, they want the 6 weeks, and the, booty body and all that kind of stuff in a time frame, in a like guaranteed result in a certain amount of time. And so, teenagers, 20s, even 30s, they're still going to be looking for that. Once people get past that and they start getting a little bit older, they start realizing that long-term sustainability, longevity is really important. And so there is definitely a market for that. But I think people have got to get that wisdom and life experience to kind of know that is the ideal approach. Because when you look early in life, you kind of want it now, you want everything all at once. And that's kind of what sells you when you first kind of see those things.
How would Paul from 15 years ago to 10 years ago to now change his approach if he was coaching someone who was looking to lose 10 kilos?
Cool. So the way I coach people has changed a lot over that time. And back 15 years ago, I would have still been in the gym with people. And so we would have started in that world. And so my approach would always start where they're at and kind of help them get to where they need to go. Like one of our mentors used to say, give them what they want, but also give them what they need as well, right? So you're going to kind of, if they come in because they want to feel the burn, you got to give them a little bit of that. Because if they don't get that, they're going to be like, why the hell am I training with you? This is a waste of time. So you still got to like scratch the itch, but you also got to give them that soul food and the education. And so I was always big on trying to educate my client on the why behind everything we did and just getting to know them as a person as I went. I think these days I'm a lot more direct, and I want to start as quickly and as deeply working on values, working on shifting any of the patterns and themes, and then slowly building the habits and patterns that will create long-term success. Whereas before I'd probably ease into that while starting at ground level on the gym floor and, helping them to get us some physical, tangible results that then would open up them to go, hey, this is great. And then I go, well, if we worked at this level, that would help you even more. And then opening up the mindset and the mental, emotional thing. Whereas usually this way I work with clients now is we start with the mindset and then we kind of reverse engineer it from there. Once I've got them firing on all cylinders there, it's like the tortoise and the hare. Like I'm a little bit more tortoise now. It seems slower because we're working on stuff, but you get there faster and you end up winning. Whereas we try to get there a little bit quicker with the body-based stuff and then bring in the other stuff because we realize that we can only get so far, trying to run that fast kind of thing.
So if we bring that into like a practical, tangible piece, what would that look like? What would they leave? And I know you don't do a huge amount of actual coaching clients anymore, do you?
It sprinkles. I still have some clients that have been working with you for a while. And at the moment, I'm opening up a couple more spots, but I'm not taking a lot of one-on-one clients, mostly group-based stuff and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would that look like if we're looking for like a tangible, practical takeaway that they would leave that first session with, or insight? You use the word values there, habits, patterns. What's the significance of those as somewhere to start?
Cool. So most of the time with clients, if I'm working with them as just like they called up, they want to start working with me, I would normally do a pretty deep dive into just unpacking where they're at and how they got there. I'm like a kind of big believer. You don't want to start chopping trees down until you've surveyed the area. So like I want to know how they became who they are and why they see the world the way they are. So that requires a bit of time just unpacking a bit of their life history, bit of how they see the world, a bit of really deep dive exploration in their values in life in general, but also in the context they want an outcome. So let's say they want a specific health goal, or they want a business goal, or they want to improve their relationship or finance. I would want to go into that context and unpack their values in that area too. And then once you start doing that, it's like you pull the thread and it just keeps unraveling. And so once we start looking at that, I can start seeing some things and I start asking questions, and pretty quickly you start unpacking past experiences, associations of like negative things they perceived happening and positive things they perceived happening, and how that's kind of steering their direction. And then once you've kind of unpacked that as a team, kind of looking and making a bit of a game plan of where do we start and what are the biggest, bang for your buck. If we worked on this first, what would get you the biggest outcome and biggest result of freeing up your headspace, your emotional energy? And then, working there first, and then maybe realigning values, and then starting to do tasking, which over the course of the first couple of weeks of working together starts to build a bit of that momentum, starting to get some wins on the board in the real world, build those new habits, new behaviors. Then as a coaching client, sort of as the journey unfolds, eventually, instead of moving away from and doing the therapeutic cleanup work, doing a lot more forward generative based stuff and really getting clear on goals, intentions, building their perfect week, making sure that they've got, the things in higher priority that's important to them that they're doing on a regular basis to build their self-esteem, self-worth, and belief in themselves. And whatever they need, if there's other people they need as coaches, other mentors, that they're starting to branch out into that, because I can only do what I can do. If they need someone specific to something else, I'm going to direct them to find someone to help them take those next steps and all those kind of things too.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other things that you teach, and I loved it when I had the opportunity to do it last year, is hypnosis, for those that don't understand that language. Yeah. So the general consensus is that if one was to do hypnosis, that they'd end up on stage like a chicken.
Yes.
Can you explain why that doesn't necessarily happen, what type of hypnosis that is, and the type of hypnosis that you teach?
Yeah. So stage hypnosis is fantastic entertainment. There's some people doing some pretty cool stuff out there. People have seen guys like Darren Brown and all that. They're doing mind-blowing stuff. And there's a lot that goes into that. And stage hypnosis is actually responsible for keeping hypnosis alive through the dark ages, where the American Medical Association actually banned hypnotherapy. They actually kept it going. And when people started bringing it back in therapeutically, it started running again. So it has a place, and it brings a huge awareness to hypnosis because it gets people interested in it. But it also does create sometimes some mental barriers that people might have around it. And so I kind of start off with the whole idea that all communication is hypnotic in nature. So I didn't know this even when I was a trainer of hypnotherapy. When I first learned hypnotherapy, I thought, okay, I'm reading a piece of paper, we're doing hypnosis now, and then we're not doing hypnosis. But after understanding and doing more deep dive into stage, street, conversational, therapeutic, and all the different other old school approaches of some of the older methods of what didn't look like hypnosis, but what was hypnosis, some of the spiritual approaches to healing, mesmerism. There's lots of different things that if you look at them through certain lenses, there's a lot of hypnosis that's part of that process. And I realized that anytime you interact with someone, even your posture, your tonality, they all unconsciously influence people. So if I was to say I was walking down the street this morning, and as I was walking my dog, a red Ferrari pulled up and did a burnout right in front of me. The door swung open and a clown dressed in full yellow stepped out of the car and had a whole stack of huge inflated colorful balloons. And as they stepped out of the car, all these doves flew from behind them. For you to understand what I'm saying, at some level, you're making a mental image of what I'm talking about. Like for you to have an understanding of someone else's language, you have to put yourself in their shoes and unconsciously experience that reality. So that's hypnosis. Like your unconscious processes are literally going on that journey. And that's the start of it, because everything we say to ourselves, everything people say to us is affecting our psychology and physiology. If you hang out with a mate and they tell you about their great holiday, you're there on the beach with them sipping margaritas. If you hang out with a mate that's telling you about their drama, their problems, you're getting dragged through that shit too. So like we put things on and we all have to like personally experience what the other person's talking about to know what it's like in our model of the world. And so that idea is really powerful, because when you understand that, you're going to be a lot more conscious of what you say to yourself, because all of your self-talk, all of your, utters and mutters to yourself become hypnotic suggestions to yourself. And so you're either opening up possibility or you're shutting it down with what you say to yourself, but also you're more conscious of who you let program you, what shows you watch, what people you hang around with, because you know that you're going to be unconsciously influenced by their beliefs and what they think is possible. And you're either opening up or closing down based on the societal, familial, cultural programming that you're exposing yourself to. So that's huge. But hypnosis, like we have a lot of fun with it too. We basically experience lots of different altered states. Some of the things you can do with hypnosis, you don't need some substances to experience what your mind and body can do. There's some really profound states, but there's also some fantastic healing. The ability to tap into your unconscious power where all your resources are. Hypnosis I love because it basically, as a coach and therapist, the way I teach it is all you're ever doing is bring your client back to themselves, and you get to go on the ride of that. And it's so easy to do once you've got some ideas and some frameworks and your intention set. I teach dynamic hypnosis, and we don't use scripts. We don't use preset. You have to say this there. We kind of teach frameworks and help you to sort of unconsciously build that in so that you're always working with your client dynamically, and your client has all the answers. They walk in the door with the problem and the solution together, and your job is to help them go back and find what they thought they've lost. And so that's really, really powerful.
One of the things that you mentioned there, which would be new language potentially to some people, is opening up and closing down. What exactly do you mean by that, and what's an example of that?
Cool. So let's say, you're brought up in a family where, talking about yourself and putting yourself out there isn't bragging, it's, big-headed, only people that are this do that, and people that want money is bad, this is and that. So you're brought up the whole life and you really want to start your own business. You really want to go out there and help people, but you need to post about yourself on the internet, or you need to talk yourself up and all these kind of things and put yourself out there. But your upbringing has frowned upon that. And so for some people, that can really close them down, because the ability to shine and run a successful business, to stand out as an authority or an expert, they might have the skill set and the results that can lead to that. But if they've got a belief system and that external pressure of that's not okay, we don't do that in our family, that kind of programming and hypnosis can shut you down. But if you hang out with a group of people that want to see you win, they want to see you shine, that they know there's more in you than what you're currently doing, and they kind of support and challenge you to step into that, that can open you up. And they go, hey, look, how many people have you reached this week? How many lives have you changed? What new offerings are you getting out to the world? How are you impacting society? And they're asking you those things, and how are you going to do that today? Why is that important to you? And you start getting lit up, you start opening up, you're actually tapping into that potential. That's expanding, that's opening. And so surrounding yourself with like-minded people that want to see you win, that are going to challenge you, that are going to support you as well, because that's where growth happens, at the balance of those two. That's really, really powerful. That is a game changer. And sometimes as you go on the process of evolution, you're going to outgrow friends, family, relationships, business partners. All these things happen because unless they grow with you, they're going to sometimes be a limiting factor in where you can go. And not that you don't still see those people, you just might not go to them for advice when you're asking about your next business offering or, that kind of thing. You might seek different mentors or different people to hang around with for those kind of conversations.
Final question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned there, when it comes to hypnosis and the fact that we're always under some form of hypnosis, that it becomes really important to be conscious and mindful of the programming.
Yes.
What changes have you seen in your own world in terms of what you filter and allow in as you've become stronger with the understanding of the impact that that has?
Awesome. Well, I grew up in a pretty like Roman Catholic upbringing where I had, shame and guilt and fear as like the primary sources of programming. So pretty early on, I was even in primary school where I realized there was something was weird about religion and it didn't really make sense. So I kind of questioned some of that reality pretty early, and then was always kind of a free thinker, kind of why is this way, and asking questions. So I think, if you're always asking questions, you're always looking, that's a good thing to a degree. There can be an overdoing of that too. And I've definitely done that to some degree in my life as well. And so seeking people, I found the big game changer for me was finding people that were doing what I wanted to do and finding information and approaches from them versus just listening to anyone. And so, when you're growing up, sometimes friends, family, your peer group, who you're bouncing ideas off of. But if they haven't done what you want to do, they're the wrong people to be asking. Because most of the time, I remember when I wanted to go start my own business as a PT, why don't you go to do this? Why don't you go to do that? Like people only see what they've done and what's possible for them. So if someone tells you that's a bad idea or you can't do that, that's based on their rules and their life. Maybe it is for them, but it might not be for you. And so what I became a lot more interested in was, okay, who's done this? How have they done this? And what were they doing? And how can I learn from them? And finding the right kind of people to follow the footsteps of to get the outcomes that I'm looking for, and not just, talk to my friend Joey or my mom or my dad about something that they haven't mastered or they haven't succeeded in their life. And they're always good to talk to for other stuff. But when I need advice on that thing specifically, I'm going to go to that. If you need to fix your car, go talk to a mechanic, not, Bob down the road who rides a bike and doesn't even have a car. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me. I went through stages of not watching TV, not watching, news and stuff like that. I've brought back in entertainment to some degree. I like watching a good show. I love a good movie because it gives also great metaphors. And I find in this day and age, what's really interesting is people's programming is so more diverse than it used to be. I don't know about you, Blake, but when I was growing up, there was like 3 or 4 channels. Everyone watched the same stuff. I could joke about The Simpsons. I could joke about this and everyone would know what I was talking about. Now I joke about any of that stuff. It just goes straight over people's heads. So I like having something that's like a collective meme or an idea or a concept that people have. And a lot of that is, movies and that kind of thing. And it's great to have entertainment because you learn a lot through the eyes of an experience of a story as well. So I'm a lot more integrated in that now, but I don't spend a lot of time on news and those kind of things. I'm more niched into the ideas. So I'm interested in finding out people that are deep diving and researching to those things and going to them for the source of information versus just someone that's talking about things from a certain point of view that may or may not be useful. And so like my peer groups changed a lot through my life. Who I spend time with has changed a lot. But you generally will find people that are interested in what you're interested in, and they might not all be in the same group at the same time. You might have friends for this, friends for that, people you hang out for this, people you hang out for that. And I'm okay with that. And some people have, certain beliefs and rules around that. I find that you're going to find people that resonate and enjoy and like and think the same thing's important as you in certain areas of life. And sometimes you'll get one person that does all those things, but it's rare. And sometimes you need to find specific people for specific things, and that's okay too.
Yeah, resonate with that big time. Mate, for those that want to find out more about you, the work that you do, the book, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Awesome. So kind of the hub for all of our courses and what we do at Evolve and Relaunch is evolveandrelaunch.com.au. You can kind of go there, click links and see what our course is and what's coming up. If you want to know about the book, it's launching. It'll probably be launched by the time this comes out. evolveandrelaunch.com.au/evolve your mind, all is one word. And that will get you to the place where you can kind of look at it. And if you want to buy it, we've got it in audiobook, ebook, so you can Kindle, or the actual physical book too. So whichever way you like to digest information, it should be there for you with that. We also have some really cool bonus stuff in that where we guide you through some processes. But you can find us all on social media as well, at Evolve and Relaunch on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Paul Eliseo. If you type that in, I'll probably pop up. I think there's a few different Paul Eliseos, but I'm not sure they all look like me. So if you see someone wearing a shirt like this and like this, it's probably me. So that's where you can find us if you want to find out more.
And as someone who has done their hypnosis course, I highly recommend checking out their courses. And through friends now, I think we've had probably 4 or 5 of our friends with Soph and Crystal. And I think there's a couple of others that are locked in as well that do your courses and speak so highly of it. So well done, brother. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I had super fun. Keep evolving, everyone. And hopefully we can see you soon.